In the polished marble lobby of an upscale hotel in downtown Chicago, a pregnant woman named Emily Hall clutched her stomach, her breath sharp and uneven as her heart thudded within her chest. She had just discovered a series of damning text messages and bank transfer receipts evidence of more than $50,000, money her wealthy husband had funneled into the pockets of his secret mistress. The fury that coursed through Emily's veins mixed with a profound sense of betrayal and heartbreak. In that moment, she realized the magnitude of what she had to do. This is her story, a saga of love and betrayal, power and pride, told with all the drama of real life. Emily Lewis grew up in the quiet suburbs of Arlington Heights, just outside Chicago. Her parents, Meredith and George Lewis, ran a small neighborhood bakery, famed for its homely apple pies and chocolate eclairs. From a young age, Emily absorbed the values of kindness, diligence, and loyalty as she watched her parents serve customers day after day. The sweet aroma of freshly baked treats followed her into her teenage years, weaving itself into the fabric of her memories. Her life was simple and unassuming, until the day she met Jonathan Hall. Jonathan Hall was unlike anyone Emily had ever encountered in her safe, suburban world. He was tall, commanding, and already on the fast track to success. Having graduated at the top of his class from Northwestern University's Kellogg School of Management, Jonathan built a reputation as a brilliant investor. He had turned a modest family inheritance into a fortune with a series of cunning investments in tech startups, real estate ventures, and the then-rising cryptocurrency market. By the time he was 30, he owned a multi-million-dollar portfolio and commanded a level of respect in Chicago's high society that astounded everyone around him. Emily first encountered Jonathan at a charity gala. Her mother had received an invitation for her outstanding community baking contributions and a few well-placed connections, but she couldn't attend due to a conflicting church event. She insisted that Emily go in her place, if only to meet new people and maybe find a dash of excitement outside the bakery's daily hustle. Emily felt awkward initially, standing by the lavishly decorated tables while sipping a glass of sparkling grape juice. She was never the type to plunge into conversation. Soon, they found themselves talking about everything from business to childhood dreams. Jonathan complimented Emily's refreshing authenticity, a quality he said many of the women in his social circle lacked. Emily, feeling intoxicated by his attention, found herself telling him about her family bakery, her passion for photography, and her desire to travel abroad someday. From that night forward, Emily's world changed drastically. Jonathan courted her with exquisite dinners, weekend getaways, and thoughtful gifts that made her blush. He showed her a glamorous lifestyle she had only seen in magazines, introducing her to influential people at cocktail parties and exclusive charity events. They became the talk of the town, the rising millionaire investor and the warm-hearted bakery girl. To Emily's friends, the story felt like a fairy tale, a Cinderella romance in the modern age. Even her parents, initially uncertain about Emily dating a man so far above their modest means, were eventually won over by Jonathan's generosity and politeness. When Jonathan proposed a year later, kneeling on a rooftop terrace overlooking the city skyline, Emily's tearful yes felt like the happiest moment of her life. But under the glitter of private limousines, diamond necklaces, and a dream wedding at Chicago's historic Drake Hotel, there were early red flags. Jonathan's unwavering focus on money and status occasionally surfaced in offhand comments or impatient gestures. Still, Emily believed it was just the stress of being so successful, so driven. She was convinced that his love for her was genuine. And for a while, it truly seemed that way. Emily's world, once anchored by her family and the comforting smell of fresh pastries, now revolved around champagne toasts, black tie affairs, and a husband who seemed nearly invincible in his ambitions. It was exhilarating and new, but it was also precarious, a delicate structure perched on the shifting sands of Jonathan's unquenchable thirst for more. In those early days, Emily never imagined that beneath the surface of her perfect marriage, a slow earthquake was already gathering momentum, one that would shatter their union and force her to reevaluate everything she thought she knew about love, loyalty, and life. Marriage to Jonathan brought Emily a life of luxury beyond her wildest dreams. They traveled to exotic locations, St. Moritz for skiing, Fiji for sun-soaked Christmases, and even a whirlwind tour of Europe that included high tea at Claridge's in London and a romantic gondola ride in Venice. Jonathan spared no expense in showering Emily with the best the world had to offer. Their social circle expanded as they rubbed shoulders with other affluent couples, CEOs, socialites, and celebrities. Everyone wanted to be near Jonathan, the brilliant golden boy who seemingly turned everything he touched into profit. Yet, as the months turned into years, subtle dissonances began to appear. Jonathan's business empire, though successful, demanded relentless attention. He worked long nights, attending back-to-back investor meetings or locking himself in his home office, poring over spreadsheets and trade analytics. Emily started to feel her husband slipping away from her emotionally, if not physically. The gentle, attentive Jonathan who once surprised her with homemade pancake breakfasts now seemed distant and preoccupied. Emily often tried to bridge the gap by planning small romantic surprises, a weekend at a cozy bed and breakfast, a candlelit dinner at home, or tickets to a new art exhibition. But inevitably, the sharp ring of his phone would shatter the moment. An urgent business matter would arise, and she'd watch his interest in anything else evaporate. She would see it in his eyes, that flicker of impatience whenever her conversation meandered away from something strictly practical. Though she tried to push those nagging concerns aside, they lingered like shadows in a once sunlit room. The hush that hung over their 6-bedroom penthouse near Millennium Park was striking. There were no children's voices echoing through the halls. Emily and Jonathan had been trying for a baby for a few years, but with no success. The disappointment wore Emily down, a private grief she felt more acutely each time one of her friends excitedly announced a pregnancy. Jonathan, for his part, consoled her with reassuring words, but his tone often felt perfunctory. By the time Emily finally did become pregnant, the initial joy was weighed down by her persistent fear that Jonathan had grown numb to her feelings. In this time of internal struggle, a new friend drifted into their orbit, Veronica Taylor. Veronica was introduced to Jonathan at a fundraising gala for cancer research. She was a tall, strikingly beautiful woman with auburn hair and a background in real estate development. Having recently moved from Dallas to expand her ventures into the booming Chicago market, Veronica wore an air of unapologetic ambition that reminded many of Jonathan himself. Though they met only briefly at the gala, Jonathan and Veronica seemed to spark instantly. Emily noticed her husband laughing at Veronica's jokes in a way he rarely did with anyone else, but she said nothing, attributing her discomfort to overthinking. After all, Jonathan mingled with countless attractive, successful women. Why should Veronica be any different? But the changes soon became undeniable. Veronica kept appearing in Jonathan's life, at dinner meetings, property showings, and corporate gatherings. Initially, Jonathan explained it away as a business collaboration, emphasizing the synergy between his investment firm and Veronica's real estate network. Emily wanted to believe him. She had always been trusting, and the idea of doubting her husband made her feel guilty and paranoid. Still, Veronica's presence loomed over Emily like a specter. When Jonathan mentioned an impromptu dinner at Veronica's new luxury condo to discuss potential deals, Emily's heart clenched, though she tried to mask it with a polite smile. Over time, Jonathan began to come home later and later, shrugging off Emily's concerns with dismissive promises of, "It's just business." Emily's suspicions festered. The tension in the house grew so thick that even the staff Jonathan's personal assistant, the housekeeper, and the part-time driver seemed to sense the uneasy undercurrent. Polite greetings turned into sidelong glances. Private phone calls became more frequent, and on the nights when Jonathan slept soundly next to her, Emily lay awake, anxiety chewing through her insides. Meanwhile, her pregnancy proceeded like a fragile bud, trying to blossom in harsh conditions. Despite her excitement at finally carrying the child she had always longed for, a nagging fear cast a dark cloud over her days. Was Jonathan truly supportive, or was he simply offering mechanical niceties? Each day, she wrestled with her conscience. Should she confront him about Veronica and risk looking foolish if there was nothing amiss? Or should she remain silent and cling to the dwindling hope that her marriage was still sacred? In those reflective, lonely moments, Emily often remembered the sweet warmth of her parents' bakery back in Arlington Heights. The simple life, the genuine smiles of her family, the small but heartfelt gestures of love, how she longed for that sense of certainty again. But life had dragged her far from that simplicity. She now navigated a labyrinth of wealth, status, suspicion, and a slow but certain fracturing of the love she once believed was unshakable. It happened on a crisp autumn afternoon, just as the first chill winds swept through the windy city. Emily was sorting through a stack of mail in their penthouse living room, which overlooked Lake Michigan's steel-gray waters. There were bills, glossy invitations to more galas, and the occasional letter from old friends. Normally, she would leave Jonathan's business correspondence for him, but an envelope with no return address caught her eye. It looked official, with a bank's watermark faintly visible beneath the surface. Curiosity pricked at her. The letter was addressed to Jonathan, but they had always shared financial documents openly, at least until recently. A small voice inside her urged caution, but another voice, fueled by months of suspicion, overshadowed it. She opened the letter. Her world tilted on its axis. It was a printed record of recent transactions from Jonathan's private investment account. Among the usual deposits and high-value trades, there was a glaring red flag: a wire transfer of $50,000 to a personal checking account registered to Veronica Taylor. Emily's hands shook so violently she had to set the paper down. Her mind whirred, conjuring every possible explanation. Maybe it was a loan, a real estate investment, or a charitable donation. But nothing made sense. Why would Jonathan wire such a large personal sum directly to Veronica without telling her? A wave of nausea rose in her throat. She reached for her phone, intending to call Jonathan and demand an explanation, but she felt pinned to the velvet sofa by the enormity of what she'd just discovered. Tears pricked at her eyes, and she felt their unborn child stir inside her, as though sensing her turmoil. In a daze, she gathered the documents and placed them in a sturdy folder. She paced the living room, trying to muster the courage to confront Jonathan. Hours passed, and the autumn sky grew dark. When Jonathan finally walked in at nearly 9 p.m., his tie undone and the scent of expensive cologne mixed with something else lingering in the air, Emily stood in the hallway like a statue. She tried to keep her voice steady. "We need to talk, Jonathan." He paused, scanning her face. "Can it wait? I've had a long day." She shook her head and led him to the living room. Handing him the bank statement, she watched him read it. She saw his jaw tighten and recognized the flicker of guilt behind his composed exterior. For a moment, the penthouse was deathly still. "It's not what you think," Jonathan said eventually, but his voice lacked conviction. "That's the best you can say?" Emily's voice wavered. $50,000 to Veronica Taylor. What? His explanation was a meandering mess of half-truths. She needed financial help, a quick loan, an important deal she was struggling to close on a property. Emily's anger surged, fueled by months of doubts and the heartbreak of this final discovery. "She's in real estate. She doesn't need your charity, Jonathan." He tried to maintain a veneer of calm. "You're overreacting, Em. Veronica is just a business contact. This was a short-term arrangement." Emily's lips quivered, but her voice rose with righteous fury. "Don't lie to me. I know something is going on between you two." She could barely keep her emotions in check. She thought of her unborn baby, the life that was supposed to be nurtured in love, and she felt rage bubble like molten lava beneath her heartbreak. Jonathan's eyes flitted away. "Look, it's complicated," he said lamely. "Complicated?" she repeated, tears finally streaming down her face. "You're giving her our family's money. You're shutting me out. You've barely touched me, since I told you I was pregnant. And now this humiliates me in ways you'll never understand." He rubbed his temples, his frustration mounting. "I never wanted to hurt you, but I can't deal with this drama right now." "Drama?" Emily whispered, her voice trembling with disbelief. "Is that what you think this is?" Jonathan said nothing. His silence was louder than any confession. Emily felt her world crumple like tissue paper. In a final burst of agony, she hurled the folder onto the marble floor and walked away, ignoring his calls. She locked herself in the bedroom, the sting of betrayal throbbing in her chest like an open wound. Inside her, the baby she carried felt heavier than ever, as though sharing the burden of her sorrow. In the weeks following Emily's discovery, Jonathan drifted even further away, slipping in and out of their penthouse like a ghost. Tension simmered beneath every strained conversation. Emily occupied herself with prenatal visits, forging a relationship with her obstetrician, Dr. Catherine Monroe, who noted her stress but gently advised her to focus on the health of her baby. Easier said than done. One cold November night, Jonathan insisted they attend a high-profile charity auction at the Art Institute of Chicago. He claimed it was crucial for his business reputation that they appear as a united front. "The rumors will start if we both don't show," he said. Reluctant and emotionally frayed, Emily initially refused, but Jonathan pressed her. She relented out of a residual sense of duty. Dressed in a flowing black gown that hugged her baby bump, Emily felt fragile but determined not to let the city's elite see her pain. As soon as they arrived, cameras flashed in their faces. Emily's smile was brittle, her entire body tense. Inside the museum's grand entrance, they were greeted by luminaries and socialites. Jonathan slipped into smooth conversation about stock options and philanthropic opportunities with a group of well-dressed financiers. Emily stood beside him, trying to appear engaged as the baby shifted in her womb. She felt an unsettling sense of detachment, like she was floating above it all, watching herself play the role of the beautiful wife. Suddenly, a voice purred from behind them. "Jonathan, darling, so glad you could make it." Emily knew the voice before she turned. Veronica Taylor, resplendent in a shimmering gold dress that clung to her every curve, approached with a predatory smile. She had the audacity to lean in and lightly brush her lips against Jonathan's cheek in greeting. Emily noticed the flicker in Jonathan's eyes, equal parts discomfort and thrill. A wave of nausea washed over Emily, and she grasped for a nearby pillar to steady herself. Veronica feigned surprise at seeing Emily. "Emily, you look radiant." The subtext in her voice bristled with condescension. Emily forced a polite smile, swallowing back a retort that threatened to tear from her throat. As if orchestrated by fate, the event organizer requested Jonathan's attention for an impromptu speech. He was to speak about the charitable endeavors supported by his investment firm. Under normal circumstances, Emily would have stood proudly by his side, but the hypocrisy of the moment made her blood boil. She took a few steps back, letting Jonathan mount the small stage alone. The next few minutes were a haze of forced applause, polite laughter, and Jonathan's confident voice reverberating across the hall. Then, mid-speech, Jonathan acknowledged Veronica as a key collaborator in a new housing revitalization project. He praised her business acumen in front of the entire crowd. Cameras flashed again, capturing Jonathan and Veronica in the same frame, two successful powerhouses. Emily could practically hear the whispered commentary among the onlookers, the pregnant wife overshadowed by the dynamic mistress. The humiliation clawed at Emily's insides. She felt her cheeks burn as she watched them share a look that lasted just a millisecond too long. Applause erupted, sealing the spectacle in place. She couldn't stand it any longer. Gripping her clutch, Emily turned and hurried toward an exit, stumbling slightly on the polished museum floor. No one seemed to notice or care. They were too busy congratulating Jonathan and Veronica on their promising partnership. Outside, the Chicago wind whipped around Emily, cutting through her thin gown. She gasped for air, tears freezing on her cheeks. A wave of indignation rose in her. This was more than an affair. It was a direct assault on her dignity, a living, breathing public humiliation. The stress pressed down on her pregnant belly, and she clutched her abdomen, fearful for her baby. In the swirl of that night's indignity and heartbreak, one truth shone like a beacon in Emily's mind. She had to stop letting Jonathan control the narrative. She had to defend herself, for her sake and for the sake of the child she carried. That resolution took root within her as she hailed a taxi, escaping the glitz and cameras, leaving Jonathan, Veronica, and a room full of Chicago's elite behind. Once home, Emily spent the night restlessly pacing the penthouse. She felt raw, stripped of any illusions that her marriage could be salvaged. Jonathan returned after midnight. He found her awake in the living room, still in her gown, staring at the city skyline in silent fury. He tried to speak, but she brushed him off, her exhaustion and anger intensifying. The following morning, Emily decided to visit her parents. She needed a sanctuary, somewhere far from the oppressive atmosphere of the penthouse. She packed an overnight bag and left while Jonathan was showering, ignoring his muffled calls to talk it over. The drive to Arlington Heights felt surreal, her childhood memories colliding with her present circumstances. As she pulled into her parents' driveway, the aroma of cinnamon and sugar from the bakery next door stirred something familiar in her soul. She stepped inside the cozy living room where her mother was crocheting baby blankets, an act that brought fresh tears to Emily's eyes. Meredith Lewis took one look at her daughter's tear-stained face and opened her arms. In that embrace, Emily felt the dam break. She sobbed into her mother's shoulder, letting out weeks of pent-up tension. Her father, George, came in from the bakery, flour dusting his apron, and wrapped both women in his strong arms. Emily felt safer in that moment than she had in a long, long time. Over cups of warm cocoa, Emily confessed everything. The affair, the suspicious wire transfer, the humiliation at the charity event. Her parents listened silently, their expressions shifting from concern to sadness to controlled anger. "My dear child, you do not deserve this," Meredith said, her voice quivering with a mixture of rage and protectiveness. "No matter how rich or powerful Jonathan is, he has no right to treat you like this." George nodded. "You have a baby on the way. You have to think about what environment you want your child to grow up in." He paused. "We taught you to stand up for yourself, Emily." She knew they were right. She had spent months making excuses for Jonathan, hoping he would change. But her child's future now took precedence. The next day, at her mother's suggestion, Emily visited a high-profile attorney known for defending women's rights. Sitting in the lawyer's modest office, Emily felt both nervous and empowered as she explained her situation in detail. "If your husband has humiliated you publicly and invested a significant portion of marital funds into another woman, you have a strong legal claim," the attorney advised. "Especially with a baby on the way, you need to protect your interests and your child's." Emily nodded, the adrenaline of making a life-altering decision coursing through her. "I've never done anything like this," she admitted, her voice trembling. "I'll guide you," the lawyer said gently. "But understand that Jonathan's net worth is considerable, and he'll likely put up a fight." Fear flickered in Emily's eyes, but she suppressed it. "I won't be silent anymore," she declared. "I refuse to be shamed or hidden away." In that small law office, with the hum of a space heater in the background and the baby stirring inside her, Emily felt her resolve crystallize. She was ready to reclaim her life. Filing the lawsuit wouldn't just be about money. It would be a stand for her dignity and the future of her unborn child. Meanwhile, Veronica Taylor sat in her sleekly furnished downtown condo, a panoramic view of the city spread out below. She was sipping a glass of expensive rose while skimming through online headlines. Gossip blogs and business journals alike were abuzz with rumors of strife in the Hall household. Jonathan Hall's mysterious business partner, friend or fling, one headline teased. Veronica snorted, though she wasn't entirely smug. She was ambitious, certainly, but she also felt a pang of conscience when she recalled Emily's face at the Art Institute. Her phone buzzed with a text from Jonathan. "We need to talk." When Jonathan arrived, his expression was tense. Emily found the bank statement, he began. Things have escalated. She's threatening to file a lawsuit. Veronica set her glass down a bit too hard. What does that mean for us? I don't know. Jonathan paced, frustration etched on his face. She's consulting with a high-profile attorney. If this goes public, my reputation, our businesses, everything could be at stake. A flicker of worry crossed Veronica's features. I didn't sign up to ruin your life, Jonathan. I never meant to hurt Emily. I guess I thought you'd handle things more discreetly. Jonathan stopped pacing and stared at her. Discreetly? You showed up at the charity event in that dress, practically announcing to the world that there's something going on between us. You invited me. Veronica's eyes blazed. Or did you forget that detail? His shoulders sagged, and he sank on her white leather sofa. I'm sorry. I'm just stressed out. Emily is pregnant, and now she's turning this into a crusade against me. It could cost me a fortune. Veronica hesitated, torn between her desire to keep Jonathan's favor and a nagging guilt. Maybe you should make amends, she suggested. If you antagonize her, it'll only make things worse. Jonathan looked up, his eyes dark with fear and anger. Amends, he repeated, as though the concept were foreign. It won't work. Emily's not someone you can buy off now. Not with the baby and everything that's happened. He rubbed his forehead. I can't let her drag my name through the mud. I've built everything I have from scratch. I can't lose it all. Veronica swallowed. She could feel the storm brewing, and she silently wondered what Emily would do next. A part of her almost respected Emily for standing up for herself. But she said nothing of that to Jonathan. Instead, she let the silence fill the condo, each tick of the clock marking a step closer to the inevitable confrontation that would engulf them all. Emily returned to the penthouse a few days later, but only to collect essential belongings. Jonathan tried to speak with her, offering half apologies mixed with accusations, but she was resolute. She calmly informed him that she had retained legal counsel. Her face was pale, but set with a new steeliness that took Jonathan aback. The next morning, Emily met with her attorney, Gloria. They went through the legal documents, a petition for divorce, alimony, child support, and compensation for emotional distress. Emily signed the papers with a trembling hand, tears threatening to blur her vision. She was no longer just Jonathan Hall's wife. She was a woman seeking justice. Simultaneously, Jonathan received the official notification at his office. He tore open the envelope, his heart pounding as he realized the gravity of what Emily was demanding. His first call was to his own attorney, a sleek corporate lawyer named Mark Reynolds. She's hitting you hard, Jonathan, Mark said after reviewing the documents. Adultery, emotional distress, financial misconduct, it's all there. She has a strong case, especially with her pregnancy and the public embarrassment. Jonathan cursed. We need to fight back. The $50,000 transfer is documented. Mark sighed. There are texts, phone records. This won't be easy to sweep under the rug, unless you can settle out of court. That might be your best bet. Settle. Jonathan bristled. You mean just hand over half my fortune? This isn't just about half, Mark said calmly. You have a child on the way. Courts tend to favor the mother if she can demonstrate marital misconduct. This is ridiculous. Jonathan slammed his fist on the desk. I've worked too hard to see it ripped away because Emily can't handle a little slip-up. A little slip-up that's made headlines, Mark countered. We need to strategize. Either we negotiate or we go to war in the courtroom, and that could be even more damaging. That evening, Jonathan found Emily at the penthouse, packing more boxes. The place felt hollow, stripped of the warmth that once made it a home. I got the papers, he said stiffly. We can settle this, Jonathan. I can offer you a generous sum, enough to live comfortably and raise the baby. We don't have to go through a messy trial. Emily stared at him, anger sparking in her eyes. You think this is about money? You humiliated me, Jonathan. You humiliated our marriage. You can't just throw cash at me and expect me to walk away quietly. What do you want then? Revenge. She laughed bitterly. I want accountability, Jonathan. I want you to realize that your actions have consequences. And I want our child to have a stable life, something more than being raised in the shadow of your ego and deceit. He opened his mouth to speak, then closed it. He saw a fierce resolve in her that he barely recognized. "There's still a chance to keep this out of the public eye," he ventured. Emily shook her head. "I'm done hiding your secrets. I'm not the naive woman you married." At those words, Jonathan felt something twist inside him. The woman standing before him, though pregnant and tearful, looked stronger than he had ever seen her. He knew then that the battle ahead would not be easily won. For the first time, he realized that beneath Emily's soft exterior lay a spine of steel that refused to break. The day of the hearing arrived under a bleak winter sky. Snowflakes fell lightly on the courthouse steps as reporters braved the cold. Emily, wrapped in a warm coat to protect her heavily pregnant belly, held her head high as she walked inside, flanked by her attorney. Across the lobby, Jonathan paced, looking uncharacteristically disheveled. Proceedings began in a wood-paneled courtroom. The tension was palpable. Emily's lawyer, Gloria, led with the evidence. Text messages, financial records, and testimony from a former employee detailing Jonathan's attempts to mask personal expenses as business deals. Then came Veronica's digital proof, the final nail in Jonathan's coffin. When Veronica herself took the stand, her voice shook, but her testimony was precise. She admitted to the affair, but emphasized Jonathan's manipulations, describing how he coerced her into colluding on the real estate scheme. A hush fell over the courtroom as she recounted texts where Jonathan threatened to ruin her if she didn't play along. Jonathan glowered from the defense table, his composure finally cracking. After hours of arguments, the judge delivered his ruling. He acknowledged the validity of Emily's claims, citing Jonathan's actions as financial misconduct, emotional distress, and a breach of marital trust. He ordered a substantial settlement in Emily's favor, enough to secure her and the baby's future for decades to come. Additionally, the judge mandated generous child support. The judge's gavel landed with a resounding crack. Emily felt tears of relief and vindication flood her eyes. She cast a final glance at Jonathan, who stared at the table, his once invincible image shattered. In the following weeks, Jonathan faced a barrage of investigations from his board and financial regulators. His empire began to crumble. Emily, on the other hand, moved into a comfortable suburban home closer to her parents. She converted a spare bedroom into a nursery, decorated with soft yellows and blues, and focused on her health. She had found her closure in court and wanted no further public spectacle. A month later, Emily went into labor. At dawn, she welcomed a baby girl into the world, a precious child she named Hope. Holding her daughter for the first time, Emily felt an overwhelming surge of love that cast away the final shadows of betrayal. Years passed. The penthouse, the galas, and the courtroom drama faded into a distant memory. Emily found joy not in headlines or settlements, but in the simple, beautiful moments of her new life. She had rediscovered her passion for photography, capturing the changing seasons and the bright, curious eyes of her daughter. She even partnered with her parents to open a small, chic patisserie in the city, blending her family's tradition with her own modern taste. It was a place built not on a fragile empire of lies, but on a foundation of love, hard work, and the sweet scent of a new beginning. One sunny afternoon, as she watched a giggling Hope chase butterflies in their backyard, Emily smiled. She had learned that betrayal could break you, but it could also set you free. In reclaiming her power, she had discovered her own resilience, and that more than any courtroom victory or settlement was the richest gift of all. Thank you for joining us on this emotional roller coaster, a story of power, betrayal, and the unyielding spirit of a woman who refused to stay silent. From lavish penthouse galas to the humbling halls of the courthouse, Emily's journey reminds us that money can't mend a broken vow, and that sometimes our greatest trials lead us to our truest strengths. If this tale moved you, inspired you, or simply kept you on the edge of your seat, we invite you to show your support. Please like this video, share it with friends who love real-life drama, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more stories that delve deep into the human experience. Your engagement helps us continue bringing raw, thought-provoking narratives straight to you. Thank you. And until next time, stay strong, stay true, and remember, you are never alone in your fight for justice.